J.P. Samuel is the lead pastor of the Spectrum Church in Silicon Valley and is the co-chair of iSpectra, an organization working toward multicultural church leadership in the Bay Area. J.P. pursued his Ph.D. at IIT Madras and the University of Freiburg and holds a master's in global leadership from Fuller Theological Seminary. He has ministered among international students, refugees, and professionals and is passionate about helping professionals connect their faith with their work. He and his wife Jemima have a daughter, Carissa, and are in the final stages of adopting 2 children. Please help me welcome J.P. Samuel.
Thank you. Good morning, and I'm so excited to be here this morning. I just remember a couple of years ago, we did our first conference, iSpectra, Igniting Multicultural Discipleship, that brought together 400 pastors, church leaders, Christian professionals for the very first time in the Bay Area. And several initiatives happened as a result of that. Several of you chipped in to make that event a big success. We were able to continue what we started here in training churches to engage cross-culturally. We even started our own church plant, and we just celebrated our 2nd year anniversary, and we're so thankful to God for that. And what was even more exciting was we formed a multicultural pastoral cohort of 15 pastors who came together once a month, every month, meeting here at Venture, where Chip would lead us on how we could create high-impact churches. And we had great time dreaming together, praying together, and just working together, doing some amazing things right here in the Bay Area, and I'm just so thankful for that. So I'd like to really thank Chip for his friendship, his mentoring, Dan Lagasse, and all of the people who helped us, and we're just looking for even more greater things to accomplish together with you in the Bay Area as we seek to help bring God's kingdom. Personally, in my life, enjoying some of the best times. We recently adopted 2 kids from San Joaquin County, and they have become a huge blessing to us. They have ministered to us much more than we could minister to them, Brian and Sophia, and we are going to go to court in a couple of weeks to have the final adoption. They're from the foster care system, and there are 150,000, 500,000 kids in the foster care in the United States, and 150,000 of them are seeking a home to be adopted. And these kids have just radically changed our life, apart from going back to changing diapers, which we forgot a long time ago. But it's some cool toys have come up now, and we're catching up on that. So as we are exploring what does being on mission right here locally in the Bay Area look like, I'd like to take you with me on a journey at a time when I went to Germany to do my grad school to this beautiful city of Freiburg in Black Forest, which is where my daughter, Carissa, was born. You know, Freiburg, like any other European small town, had this huge cathedral in the center of the city that was surrounded by marketplaces and houses, and the entire life of the city revolved around the church. This was how cities were those days, both architecturally and in their daily lives, where church controlled and permeated every sphere of life. And then I moved back here to the United States, into the Bay Area, and went on a business trip to Chicago, and went up the Sears Towers doing the touristy stuff, and saw this image of Chicago Temple. It's a United Methodist Church. It's the world's tallest church structure. And what I saw was that when you looked at the skyline of Chicago and tried to find where this world's tallest church structure is, was almost impossible. It was buried amidst this concrete jungle of high-rise corporate buildings that dwarfed it, and in a way symbolizing what has happened to Christianity in cities all over the United States, and especially here in the Bay Area. You know, San Francisco Bay Area is one of the most unchurched places in the entire United States. Several counties in the Bay Area have less than 4% of Christians. And so the question beckons us, as a Christian living in the Bay Area, what can I do to live a missional life? And we need to understand, why is our Bay Area like this? Why are people not searching after God? And to understand that, we need to understand what has happened to our world today. We live in a global world. Now, Thomas Friedman wrote this great book on The World is Flat. And he listed 10 factors that have flattened the world, that have made it and shrunk it. And of the 10 factors, 7 of those factors originated here in the Bay Area, from the emergence of the internet to search engines to social media and all of these amazing things that we invented right here in the Silicon Valley, and this has now connected 2 billion people across the planet. We are living in the center of this technological revolution that is literally changing the world. We all remember how 140-character tweets toppled governments in the Middle East, creating the Arab Spring. We have shrunk the world to the size of keyboards and tablets and our smartphones. That makes us feel powerful, isn't it? Bay Area exerts a soft power over the entire world. And it is this feeling of possessing this tremendous power at our fingertips, combined with the affluence that comes along with it, makes people in the Bay Area just not seek after God. Who needs God after all when you have power and money? But despite the affluence, despite the busyness in the Bay Area, when you get to know people, you will see they have a deep sense of God-sized vacuum and emptiness in their hearts. How much power is enough to satisfy? How much money is enough to satisfy the deepest thirst of a human soul? A couple of years ago, I befriended an Iranian couple. His name is Jilani and his wife, and we became friends, and he wanted to learn computers, and I love computers, and we got along very well. And he invited me home one evening, and when I was home, he told me, JP, I'm born a Muslim, and I'll die a Muslim, right? That was his veiled threat of, don't mess with me, don't try to change my religion or whatever. And I smiled at him, and I said, that's okay, Jilani, we can still be friends. And we continued our friendship, and as time went by, after 6 months, I get a frantic phone call in the middle of the night. And here was Jilani, and his voice was shaking, and he was crying out and saying, JP, I need you to pray for me. I think my wife has just been diagnosed with cancer. And over the next several weeks, we just huddled together and walked together and prayed together. And at the same time, God sent another Indian woman to the business. His wife was a very successful entrepreneur. She had her own boutique. And she went there and told her that you need to believe in this Jesus. He's the only true God. And with all of these things, she came back and said, after several weeks, that God actually healed her, and she now wants to believe in this Jesus. She came to our church one morning with a huge Persian gift, as is their custom, and gave a witness before our entire church, saying she wants to believe in Jesus. Jilani migrated several years ago from Iran into the Bay Area. He and many others are among those who have left their home country and live in another country that has come to be their own. Sociologists tell us that we are living in an age of migration. The scale and velocity of human migration is unprecedented in history. UN estimates right now 250 million people are living in a place other than where they were born. And if you look at California is one of the 5 states most people in the world want to come to. It's not surprising, isn't it? And inside our Bay Area demographics, if you look at it, more than 50% of people who live in the Bay Area come from 70 to 90 different countries. What this means is that the world has arrived at our footstep. You don't have to now travel to become a missionary in a remote island somewhere on the other side of the world. You just have to get up, cross your street, and see a person who has lived in another nation and impact him for Christ. Where is God in all of this, we may wonder? God is the one who is orchestrating all this movement of people around the world. Famous missiologist Professor Andrew Wall said that the direction of movement of people always coincides with the direction of movement of the gospel. And now we have people coming to the Bay Area from all over the nations, and that's an indication that we are sitting on the brink of a major revival that's about to explode in the Bay Area. And all these new Americans are open to hearing the gospel, especially from someone who does not look like them. Previously, missionaries had to go from the west to the east. Nowadays, in almost all countries, gospel is now going from everyone to everyone. And that means you and me are God's mission agents here in the Bay Area. Several years ago, I visited Boise, Idaho, and I got to meet Pastor Donald Batubanga. He's a Congolese pastor and wanted to plant a church in Boise. And when he planted a church in Boise, that was the time when refugees fled the Rwandan genocide, and he was able to minister to them and get his church together. And as I was speaking in his church, the person who translated for me didn't have his thumb. When you try to shake his hand, it would just slide because they shot his thumb when he tried to escape the genocide. And he was telling me that in that church, there were Hutus and Tutsis worshiping Christ together. Some of the relatives of the Hutus had killed some of the relatives of the Tutsis, and they would literally kill each other before they came to Christ. And it took one Congolese pastor to share the gospel and bring them together right here in the United States. For some reason, CNN misses all these stories. And if you look at Bay Area, I have another pastoral friend, Susang Park. He's the lead pastor of New Hope Church in Santa Clara, grew up in the Bay Area, went to Stanford, had a call for ministry, went and pursued training and came back and ministers in his own church. And for the past 7 years, they've taken teams to go and minister to an Indian reservation up here in the Sierras in Bishop. And after 7 years of faithful ministry, they have begun to see fruit where many native Indians are coming to know Christ and are sending their children all the way to the Bay Area to participate in the children's program. Imagine this, Korean Americans witnessing to native Indians and they accepting Christ. Can you think about that? What does the Bible have to say about all of this? The Bible is a book of people on the move because our God is a missionary God. It begins in the Trinity itself, where God decides to send His Son, leaving all His glory and splendor into heaven so that you and me can have a relationship with Him. He picks Abraham, a nomad, and tells him that He's going to make him a father of many nations. Right there is the Great Commission. You don't have to wait till Matthew. And He picks Israel and says, I want to make you a light to many nations. And as long as Israel was on the move, when they were in exile, fleeing Egypt, God demonstrated His power miraculously and people could see who the true God was. And we see in Acts, the church was scattered as a result of persecution and was always on the move and took the gospel wherever the people went. And whenever the church was marginalized and persecuted and dwarfed and minimalized was when it exploded. And right now here in the Bay Area, us being 4%, us being targeted and persecuted and minimalized, we are ready for another revival right here. One of the best models of such a church is the church in Antioch. It's funny, if you read Acts chapter 11 and 13, initially, Greek-speaking Jews only congregated with Jews, and God had to send a couple of Asians and a couple of Africans to come and mess things up a little bit. So the inner city core team had 5 people, read in Acts 13:1, 2 Africans, 2 Asians, and a European-trained Jew named Saul of Tarsus who became Paul, who then took the gospel from this church to literally transform the entire world. Another demonstration of what happens when we can transcend cultural boundaries with the gospel. But despite all of this, why are we unable to reach out to others? Think about it. It has to do with our sense of identity. Most people, including Christians, when they were surveyed and asked, "Who do you think you are?" they drew their sense of identity from their ethnicity rather than from Christ, and tend to think that their ethnicity is somehow superior than the ethnicity of the person who is right next to them. Isn't it strange? Because the Bible says we are all equally sinful despite how we look or where we come from or how much money we have or what positions we hold, and we all need the exact same amount of grace at the foot of the cross, whether you're black or brown or white or yellow. We are equally sinful, and we need to be equally saved by the precious blood of Christ under the foot of the cross. When we are able to embrace our Christian identities and let the gospel free us deep down, to love others freely is when we can reach out to others. The great commandment to love others like yourself precedes the Great Commission. I repeat, the Great Commandment precedes the Great Commission. One of the exciting things that is happening recently through our iSpectra network that really got us excited is one of the pastors who shared that he pastors a church plant that ministers predominantly to poor, marginalized, violence-impacted families in East Oakland. And he said he was approached by another young pastor who pastors predominantly young, white, affluent millennials in West Oakland, and said that they want to merge together. Can you believe that? I'm just so excited to see what a statement this can make in a place like Oakland. You don't have to go and give press conferences. You can show the world, hey, Christ can make this possible. That is what the gospel can do when we step out of our comfort zones to reach someone for Christ. Bay Area is ripe for a revival. But you know what? This revival, unlike other revivals, is not going to happen in mass crusades. Billy Graham said that the next revival of the 21st century is going to happen one person at a time, as each of us take the gospel and plant it in the heart of a person we love and care about. That was Billy Graham himself. And it could be just your neighbor whom you have lived with for 20 years but have never even had a cup of coffee with. It could be your colleague across your office space, or an international student who is just landed in the United States. Because when you reach these people from these different nations, through them you're impacting the other nations as well. So being on mission requires sharing our space, the power of hospitality. Invite someone home from another country and try food. No one refuses good food. And whenever I've done that and I say it's Indian food, it makes it even more easier for people. No one refuses Indian food. Anybody here? Being on mission requires sharing our time. Jesus invited himself to Zacchaeus' home for a meal. He didn't even have to preach the gospel. The guy just gave his life for Christ. I wish it were easy like that, but we got to do some talking. He was always hanging out with Samaritan women and adulterers and people who were alcoholics, and he showed them that he just loved them unconditionally, and that was powerful. And being on mission involves sacrifice, sacrificially sharing ourselves. 6 years ago, after serving in the tech world, I made a decision to quit and serve Christ fully. It was a big step of faith for us financially, spiritually, and emotionally, but God had blessed all these years and made these the best years of my life. He may not call you to quit your job, but he may just call you to move across your street and make a friendship with this neighbor you've seen every day or this colleague at your workplace. So I want to close with William Carey's quote: expect great things from God and attempt great things for God. And it all begins by taking one baby step as you commit your life to Christ. Shall we get this done, people? God bless you.
Dr. Saji John is one of the world's leading experts on community renovation through self-sustainability. He consults globally for foundations, churches, and nonprofit organizations. Saji joined Operation Mobilization India in 1983 and rose to serve as a national director for OM India schools and vocational skills training centers. In 2007, Saji and his wife Cynthia started Asha Jyoti, which restores and vocationally trains girls rescued from trafficking through its employment skills training program. He also has evangelism teams and church planner training programs. Saji holds a master's degree in leadership and management and has completed his doctoral studies in missions. Please help me welcome Dr. Saji John.
Thank you. Thank you. Before I begin, I want to thank each one of you for your prayers and support to the ministry of John Foundation there in India. And I want to especially express my thanks to the India team and the missions department here at Venture for their constant encouragement to us in what we do there in India. I would also like to thank the leadership for giving me this opportunity to share what the Lord God has been doing in and through John Foundation over the last 9 years. It was in June 2007, a local pastor brought 2 girls who were being left on the road to our house and asked both me and my wife Cynthia if we would like to take care of these 2 children. What had happened that morning was these 2 girls were being left on the road by their own father, and when this pastor saw him leaving those 2 girls on the streets of Hyderabad, he went and asked this man, "Why are you doing this?" And this man said to the pastor, he said, "Look, I have 5 daughters, and I do not have the needed resources to feed them and to educate them, but at least if I leave them on the streets of Hyderabad, they can beg and eat something and survive." And he said to the pastor, "If you want to take them, you take them. If you don't, then I will just leave them on the streets and go away." So this pastor took these 2 girls and brought them to us because he had heard that we had a heart for children of this sort, and he asked if we would like to take care of them. But at that time, we had no children homes. At that time, we had no staff to take care. No house was available, no infrastructure. But at the same time, both me and my wife Cynthia knew that if they were just left on the streets of Hyderabad, soon they will be trafficked and will be taken into sex trade. So we decided to take those 2 girls into our home. And what began with those 2 girls in June 2007 has grown today. And today we have over 1,000 children in our 13 children homes, in our back-to-school program and in our 17 tutorial centers. At that time, all what we wanted to do was to just take care of 16 children. The reason for that is I was educated by a Swedish missionaries who came to our village and was doing evangelism and was planting churches in our village. And he took 16 children from that village and gave us Christian education. And out of the 16, 15 of us are in ministry. And I thought when the Lord enables us that we want to at least give education to 16 children. So by the end of the first year, we had 16 children, and Cynthia had quit the job to help them in the home, and I was working extra hours to help support these children. But at the end of first year, we had a boy by name Raju brought to us. And that very morning, he had seen both of his parents being murdered right in front of his eyes by his uncles who were after his property. And they were also after Raju because they knew he will be the natural heir to the property of his parents. And he was brought to us and he had no place to go. So we had to accept him as our 17th child. 2-3 days later, we were presented with Anusha and Anil, who were left right in front of a Catholic church by their own mother, hoping somebody will take care of these children. And the church called us and said, "Is there any way can you take care of these 2 children? Because there is no place for them to go." So we accepted them because they had no place to go. So the 16 children became 18 children, 18 became 13, and so on and so forth. And today we have 13 children homes. And as we started working with these children, we realized that if we want to see these children succeed in life, then we must not only provide them a home and introduce them to the love of Jesus Christ, but we must also provide them with quality education, which is so key in empowering them. And one morning, while I was sitting in our small office, a lady came to us with two of her daughters, and her husband was a medical rep who had died 3 months ago in a road accident. And 3 days after his death, her in-laws thought their son died because this lady was a curse in the family. And because of that, they asked her and her two daughters, aged between 5 and 7, to leave the home. And for 3 days, they were roaming around the streets of Hyderabad. And finally, they found a small little hut in a slum, and they were staying there. And this lady brought these two girls to us and asked us, "Sir, is there any way you can help me educate my daughters?" She said, "I have studied up to the 12th grade. I have a tremendous desire to see my daughters being educated and become graduates. But I have no resources to send them to school. 3 months ago, my husband died. And because I could not pay the fees, the school has asked them to leave the school." And she was begging and crying and saying, "Please help me educate these two girls." And I said to her, "Lady, all that I have is a small little children home. I do not have any resources. I do not have any projects that can really help your girls." This was 9 o'clock in the morning. And 4 hours later, around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, when I came out for lunch, this lady was still standing near the gate of our office, crying bitterly, hoping somebody will help her daughters to get educated. And when I saw this, it broke my heart. Here were two girls and a woman agonizing for no fault of theirs, just because the society has been cruel to them. And I said to Cynthia, "I don't care whether we have a program or not. Let us just take them to the school from where they were removed." And we took them to the school and got them readmitted back into the school. And all it costed me at that time was $9 per month per child to have them readmitted back into the school. While driving back, I thought to myself, why don't we start a program called Back to School Program for children of single mothers? And I'm glad to say today we have 495 children of single moms who are in this program. You know, while all of this was going on, we hired a single mom by name Vijaya to come and help in the kitchen for our children. 2 days after she joined, a group of policemen came and arrested her. And we later found out that she had stolen a gold chain from another home where she had worked before. When I asked Vijaya, "Why did you do this?" And she said she just wanted to feed her son and just wanted to send her son to the school. She had completed up to the 12th grade in her school, but had lost her husband in a road accident, but did not have the resource to feed herself and her son, pay the rent, and send her son to the school. You know, through this incident, I realized that we cannot go on helping these single moms by paying the fees of their children, but we must somehow empower them to stand on their own leg and give them an opportunity to get a job so that they can send their children to school on their own. So we did a lot of research that will give them jobs. I talked to a lot of corporate houses in our city, talked to a lot of factory owners, and started designing programs in line with what these factories needed. And I asked the factory owners, "If I give these single moms the skills that you need, would you help them getting a job as part of your corporate social responsibility?" We then started training institute that will provide employable skills to these ladies in the area of computers, tailoring, as beautician, as nursery teachers, and etc. And I'm glad to say this morning, so far we have trained 3,692 school dropout girls and single moms, and 89% of these ladies are employed today. You know, more than 800 of these ladies have accepted Christ, and over 125 of them have taken water baptism right in the campus where we have our office. And every one of these 3,692 ladies have a Bible in their hand today. Vijaya was one of them. Though initially we helped her son to go to school, when we trained her in computer, the day she got graduated, she got a job as a data entry person in a furniture shop. She has accepted the Lord. Today, both she and her son part of a local church, and she is able to send her son with her own earning, with the salary that she gets. Alia is another person who comes from a Muslim background. Her father left her and her mom at a very young age, and this forced her mother to marry a man who was 60 plus years. Her stepfather started mistreating her and wanted her to get involved into sex trade. And when she did not cooperate, he asked her to leave the home. She came to us feeling totally rejected and broken and wanting to end her life. And we encouraged her to do an accounting package course at Asha Computer Institute. While the course was still on, we were able to find her a job as an accountant. As I said earlier, we never planned any of these things. But we were responding to the needs that were being brought on our way by the Lord God. The state where we come from has the highest number of people who are trafficked into sex trade. Yet there is not a single Christian agency that is involved in rescue and rehabilitation of these girls. Though we were often presented with this need, we kept saying no. We said we have no resources, we have no staff to do this. But in 2013, God convicted us of this need, and we opened our first Asha Restoration Home for girls rescued from trafficking in 2013. And in that first home alone, I'm glad to say, we have already had 40 girls who have come and gone through our counseling and training program. Out of the 40 girls we have had, 32 of them have accepted Christ. 23 of them have taken water baptism. 33 of them are employed today. 2 of them are married to pastors. And another one is going through our church planters training program. But now we have 4 homes, 4 restoration homes for girls rescued from trafficking, in which we can accommodate at any given time, 40 girls. 2 of our restoration home girls who came to us and who came to know Christ during their time with us, went back to their village and they led their mother, who was also a commercial sex worker, to the Lord. And 3 of them together, they led 6 others to the Lord. And just a few weeks ago, we had the first Sunday service in their village, giving birth to a new church. Can you imagine? Just a few months ago, they were involved in sex work. And today they are successful church planters. This is what God can do. This is what your prayers can do. And this is what your contribution to the work in India can do. The faith of these people are very strong. When the mother of these 2 girls who had accepted Christ was asked by her brother, he said to her, "Look, you are a Hindu. And when you die, if you are a Hindu, we will have to burn you. But now that you claim to be a Christian, if you die, whether we should burn you or bury you." And she turned back to her brother and said, "I don't care whether you burn me or bury me, because before you do that, I will already be with my Lord Jesus Christ." What gives us joy is the transformation that takes place in the lives. Priyanka, whose mother was trafficked and sold into a brothel in Mumbai, and the same traffickers were after her life. And that's when we were able to intervene in her life and rescue her and give her computer training. And today she is going to a church and she is working as an administrator in the hospital. One day, a well-educated and a rich Hindu young man walked into my office. He had come to know Christ a few months ago. And he had a tremendous passion to preach the gospel to his neighbors, to his relatives and his community. But his parents said, "If you start preaching the gospel, you will have to leave the home." So the man had to leave the home just with the clothes what he was wearing. And he went around the Bible college asking if he could study the Bible. But nobody would give him a seat because he had no certificate, nor did he have any money to study there. So he came to me and said, "Sir, I want to study the Bible. Can you please help me study the Bible so that I can go back to my community and bring them to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ?" At that time, I did not have a Bible college. What I said to him is, you can be part of our evangelism team. But that's when the Lord laid in my heart a burden to give shelter to people who come to know Christ from non-Christian background. Because the many young people, when they come to know Christ, the first year is a very difficult year for them because they are kicked out of their home, and neither do the family accept them, nor do the local churches. Many local churches may not accept them. And I am glad to say, so far we were able to train 136 of these young people in our church planters training program. And when they come to us, we not only train them as church planters, during that 1 year we give them training in the area of plumbing or electrical or welders. And when they go back to their community, though they are church planters at heart, they go back as an electrician or as a welder, which gives them access into the community and which also gives them the income to stand on their own leg. And Babu Rao was one of them, who was a Hindu priest along with his father in a temple. But when his mother got sick, they went to many temples. They sacrificed hen, goat, and pig, but had no result. Finally, a pastor came to their home and prayed for his mother, and his mother was instantly healed. And he said to me, my father can serve whichever God he wants to, but I will only serve the God who has healed my mother. And today, he is going through our church planters training program. You know, apart from the many churches that are planted by our church planters, we now have 3 churches established among our employable skills training students with over 575 members. All of these people are first-generation Christian who have come to know Christ through the ministry that was started a few years ago. You know, to support all of this, God has also given us 5 businesses. God has given us 2 very successful garment factories and an wholesale Christian Bibles and book operation. We have a gift line production factory. We have a beauty parlor. We have a microloan program. These businesses help support the ministry that God has given to us. So in all what we do, we have 3 objectives. Our first objective and passion is to make Christ known to the people whom the Lord brings on our way. And the second objective is to make our beneficiaries self-sustainable. And the third objective that we have is to make our own ministry self-sustainable. Friends, as we walk along the journey of our lives, representing Jesus, we come across so many who are hurt and who are helpless. They are crying out for someone to come and rescue them. And as His representatives, we are expected to be His hands and His eyes who will restore them back to the Heavenly Father. There are those that are hurting through sexual abuse. There are those that are hurting because they are orphans. There are those that are hurting because of domestic violence. All laying in our neighborhood and the roads in which you and I walk every day. But we pretend as though they do not exist. We pretend as though we do not see them. Yes, when the Lord walks through our world, seeing these hurting people, it pains His heart. But I am sure it brings even greater pain to His heart when those of us who know the Lord and are supposed to be His hands and feet here on earth go about doing our job as though nothing has happened. Some of us say we do not feel comfortable enough to get involved. Some of us say we are not competent or equipped enough to get involved. Some of us feel we are not holy or good enough to get involved. My friends, I want to say none of us are holy enough to do the work of His, but it is by His grace and grace alone. And if we wait till we are competent and comfortable and good enough, nothing will happen. We simply have to get involved in the lives of people and do what God has called us to do. Take the example of Moses. When God asked him to go and rescue the Israelites, did he feel comfortable? Did he feel excited about his assignment? No. But he simply had to obey and take the risk. Take the example of Noah. When God asked him to build the ark, did he feel comfortable when all the people made fun of him? No, he did not. But he believed God and did what God wanted him to do. Take the example of Abraham. When God asked him to sacrifice Isaac, did he feel comfortable? No, but he simply obeyed God because he wanted to express his worship through his obedience. If they all had waited till they felt comfortable about what the Lord God had asked them to do, they would have never achieved what they achieved in their lives. They simply had to be obedient to the call of God and partner with him to become God's agents of change and transformation. My friends, it's not whether we feel comfortable about it or not, but it is being obedient to the call of God upon our lives. Friends, when God calls us to his work, he shall provide us, he shall equip us. I have my own share of faith-building experience. When I came to know Christ, I was studying to become a medical doctor. And when I came to know Christ, I left my medical studies and went into mission field. My father, who was not a Christian at that time, became so upset and he did not talk to me for 2 years. He did not allow me to go back home for 2 years. And there I was in the mission field. One day I had to go from Philippines to Papua New Guinea on a mission job. And I did not have a suitcase. And I said to God, I'm not going to ask my father. Would you please give me a suitcase, but I will not tell anybody. On the Sunday morning, a small church in Philippines invited me to preach. After the message, a couple took me to a meal and then they were driving me back to the ship where I was. And they said, Saji, we want to come back and see you again. I said, no, you can't because we will leave in an hour's time. They said, no, but we have to see you. I said, okay. And after half an hour, they came back with this big suitcase. And they said to me, while we were driving you, God showed us a suitcase. And he told us, you need a suitcase. My friends, is our God alive today? Yes, he is. Does he answer our prayers? Yes, he is. He is a God who is alive and at work in our world today. But are we willing? Are we willing and are we obedient and faithful to the calling of our God upon our lives? And that's my prayer this morning for each one of us, that may we participate and partner with God in becoming his agents of change and transformation in a hurting world such as ours. May God help us to do that. Amen.